Knuckles Comic Issue 3. So faced with a bunch of monochrome people running towards him, Knuckles gets to planning. He orders Mighty to create a roadblock by using super strength to fell a tree. So with the super strength, that means he's sort of like the bunny of the Chaotix, only not as good because he doesn't have all sorts of cyborg enhancements that let him fly and shoot lasers and stuff. Anyways, he creates the roadblock and... Wait, did I see that mouse guy who ran the evil amusement park in the Knuckles Chaotix special? I thought he got sent to prison. Anyways, Knuckles tells Vector that he needs a force of nature to stop another force of nature. Naturally, he's confused by this, and Knuckles explains that if he adjusts the settings on those headbangers he wears to the max, their sonic force would blow that puppy out, whatever that means. Okay, plenty of things wrong with this. First, why is he calling them headbangers? Who calls headphones that? I thought headbanger meant metalheads. Is this a slang term I'm not aware of? And speaking of slang, Knuckles sinks into it so deeply at the end that I could barely understand what he's trying to say. Does he mean blow out the speakers? That would ruin them. And why would they ever design his headphones to be allowed to output that much sound? They would get sued. They deafen people. Unless these are some specially designed headphones to get that hot. But who would ever want to own those? Despite how little sense this makes though, I do absolutely love the concept of them actually using Vector's headphones music-loving gimmick to make him be useful in the fight. Oh, Knuckles actually kind of lampshades it. That's smart. Amazing that you can still hear now that I think about it. That's worth a chuckle. It comes off as the writer going cheerfully, yeah, I know this doesn't make sense, but it's a cool idea, so I gotta use it. And I appreciate that honesty. Oh, that's another thing. I don't think Knuckles putting his hands over his ears alone would do anything for him. All of them should go deaf from this. And I was thinking maybe Rotor had made that sound producer Vector's and that's why it produced so much sound to be a weapon, but then Mighty said that even he doesn't know where he got it from, and his own friend won't even tell him. Finally, they make use of the fire, as it serves as a Chekhov's gun that makes the Dark Legion members panic as they try to avoid running into the fire. A concept that made me smile just thinking about it, cause come on, these guys look so menacing, they're supposed to be huge threats, so seeing them get all panicky like that is pretty amusing. Then we cut back to the past, where we see a Hall of Science, which for some reason hasn't changed its name yet, even though Echidnas now hate science, getting shot at with lasers by the UFOs of people who naturally didn't want to have their technology stolen from them. Edmund's son walks in to inspire the people in the hall, and gets shouted at because his family put them in that mess in the first place. No, I'm pretty sure it's the judge guy's fault for making up that bullshit law in the first place. Edmund just went along with it. This is a pretty intriguing concept though. I love the idea of it, that Knuckles got a stain on his family honor to be ashamed of, at least back then, for what Dimitri did. It makes sense. Then an Echidna who's dressed in a white robe and thus looks exactly like Knuckles' father puts a ray gun at the kid, saying that the Dark Legion might stop attacking them if they give them his head on a platter. And I like how shocked everyone else looks at this creepy idea of him, basically proving that not everyone is totally supportive of that. He is desperate at least, I understand, but obviously they're not going to stop from that because giving them what they want requires giving them back their technology, not doing this. The kid reacts really unrealistically to his life being threatened out of nowhere. You'd think he'd be freaking out, be really upset and want to cry at this point, but instead he acts like a Gary Stu, being so ridiculously calm and mature about it that he says he could pull the trigger if he wants to. I don't care how much the ants trained you to be a guardian. I don't care how much you learned about science, or how much you worked out. No one would change into being like this so easily, especially not a kid. We don't even know this kid. We don't even know how long he's been in training. So this feels out of character, even though we don't know him at all. And then we have some more bullshit. The guy threatening him then does a completely ridiculous 180 personality, going from trying to kill him to crying that he's not worthy. And the kid responds as if he's got a god complex by saying that if he's not worthy, who is? Who does he think he is? More importantly, he should not be getting out of trouble this easily. Then the kid says that they must build a bridge to each other, all of them, if the people are to survive and grow. Basically saying vaguely with the power of vagueness that they need to make everybody happy to fix the problem. Well, duh. He's just saying vague things in an attempt to sound profound, when really he doesn't know what the solution even is. Obviously, it would be to get rid of that stupid law and just make it optional for people. But that makes too much sense. So no one's gonna do that. But yeah, this kid is basically acting like he's got a messiah complex. I'm pissed at even typing that in stuff like Sonic related. And it would be fine if the writer made it clear that he's still just a kid who doesn't in fact have all the answers, and doesn't in fact have infinite wisdom just because he learned stuff and worked out a little, and didn't have him earn people's undying worship so easily, even if it is just one person. But instead, because of his lack of self-awareness in the writing, I'm getting the weird feeling that I'm expected to just take it at face value that this kid is now super wise and mature, even though he still won't recommend the common sense solution that's screaming at him that would stop the fighting. What is wrong with making the law optional? He then says some more vague nonsense that's supposed to mean something as he leaves, saying that if he doesn't return, remember that there's more than one option. No, not really. There's only one option. Remove the law! Godspeed, Steppenwolf. I thought that was German for a second. It wouldn't be so bad if this wasn't a kid. Then we cut back to Knuckles in the Chaotix, and Knuckles has a smart plan where he orders his friends and him to disguise themselves as members of the Dark Legion like he had. Even though, okay, in the previous issue they went out of their way to explain that Knuckles could fit in these suits because they're his size, even though he's barely a teen and the soldiers are adults. But anyways, they can fit Knuckles, sure, but Vector? Charmy? I don't know, maybe they're magic technology suits that can shapeshift to fit anyone who wears them. But if all the echidnas of the same age group are the same size, they shouldn't see the need to make the suits like that. I kinda like how you see the echidna without the black cloak lying on the ground, and how he doesn't look like the weird blob things in the cloaks. Though it just makes me wonder why they look so weird in the cloaks if they're not wearing suits in them to look like that. Knuckles gets into the UFO with his friends and fails to learn from the mistakes of Ant-Man's son by using a UFO against the Dark Legion and risking it being shot down. I mean, I still think this is really cool, but why does it work for him? Knuckles asks why the tower that rose out of the ground had been built without anyone noticing it. And the echidna who was watching him from an invisible camera apparently shows that he had microphones to pick up what he said too, so he could respond to it. Either that or he can read minds just like Knuckles' father did when he responded to his son's thought bubbles. Which, I guess those thought bubbles were added in post-production and they originally wanted to make him just say all that. It's explained that this tower had been built a long time ago. I thought at first that this was a villainous echidna like Kragok because I just glanced at the panel and I thought I was seeing braids and dreadlocks where Archimedes was. Clearly I wasn't paying enough attention. No, instead it's not a villain, but Knuckles' father. That would explain why he could hear Knuckles then. He's just using his mind-reading power again. Knuckles' father reveals why he hadn't told Knuckles about the Dark Legion, because he wanted to spare him the dark history of his people. Archimedes points out a flaw in his parenting, getting me immediately to root for him. He's being too overprotective, and Knuckles' lack of knowledge could get him killed. Well, first off, he seems to be doing well so far. Second, Archimedes is doing the same thing to Knuckles, withholding information from him, so what a hypocrite. And third, why would an overprotective father abandon his son going to the Forbidden Zone without him, without putting him in anyone else's care? Wouldn't he have been a nervous wreck worrying about him? Finally, Knuckles' father gets a clue that Archimedes should be with Knuckles, and tells him to go back to him because he can't face the Dark Legion alone. Except he's not alone. He has the Chaotix with them. Also, this just makes his deciding to make Archimedes stay with him feel all the more pointless and detrimental to Knuckles, because he said he needs his wisdom with him, but then he ends up having to tell him to go back to Knuckles before he can use the wisdom at all. He's allowed to make a mistake, it's just a little frustrating that it amounted to nothing. Also, he says future guardian, when Knuckles is already the guardian of his island, so obviously he doesn't view him as truly being the guardian yet, that he thinks he's not old enough to be ready. Well, what, were you guarding the Emerald? No, you were just watching him and doing nothing. Then as we see a shot of Dark Legion members getting into some UFOs, with one of them having a humorous little dinky little go-kart because they're out of UFOs, Knuckles' father continues in a text box that Knuckles has only been alive for 15 seasons, while the Legion have existed for that many generations. First off, I had to reread this text blurb about 5 times to finally get what he was trying to say, and I think that many generations is to blame. Second, okay, it is pretty interesting and creative that echidnas like to measure a person's lifespan in seasons, but that just obligated me to stop and try to figure out Knuckles' age in years at that point based on that, when they could have just told me how old he was in years outright and saved the audience the trouble. There are 4 seasons in a year, So 8 seasons is 2 years, and 12 seasons is 3 years, and 16 is 4 years. Knuckles is 4 years old? Somehow I don't think that's right. Okay, so this is just extremely confusing. So yeah, that dialogue sucked. The only good part about it is that by saying the Dark Legions have existed for many generations, he seems to be trying to imply that these individual members have existed for many generations, so they're like 400 years old, all of them. If that's true, that's pretty cool, like they extended their lifespan and stopped their aging with technology. Anyways, Knuckles and his friends follow the members of the Dark Legion in disguises as they go to the Great Hall. Except the problem is, even with their hoods up, their actual faces are clearly visible in their hoods. And it's revealed that the cloaks don't have a magic spell that would make their faces look like the others by wearing them. Vector, for example, sticks out like a sore thumb. You'd think they would have all been noticed and caught the minute anyone thought to look at them from the front. But I guess the explanation is that they just kept looking ahead to keep people from seeing them from the front. I mean, they're just following everybody. Crisis averted. Makes perfect sense. After Vector says, "Any idea what this is about?" the comic makes me smile and almost chuckle again at Kragok coincidentally saying, "The Chaos Emerald! This is what it's always been about!" It's such a hilarious coincidence, and it makes sense in context that he would say this without having to hear Vector and respond to him on purpose. It's charming moments like this that the comic really needs a lot more of. Kragok explains that the Dark Legion are about to return to their former glory. So that's why they haven't been seen until very recently. They weren't at their former glory or even close to it yet, so that's why they didn't take out Eggman. But from what I've seen of them, I think they're still a pretty credible threat, so I'm still left wondering where they've been all this time and why they haven't been using the power of their army against Eggman. Like, that's kind of the problem with having so many other villains other than Eggman in the comic in the same planet. You'd think that one of them would have taken out Eggman by now. Kragok then says that the last son of Edmund was supposedly burned to a crisp because he assumed Knuckles had gotten killed in that fire. I haven't seen what became of those civilians running from that fire, by the way. More importantly though, son of Edmund. I assume that's just a fancier way of saying great son of Eggman, etc. Edmund. Or else Knuckles would be pretty old. Also, he's talking as if he thinks Knuckles was a huge threat that needed to be eradicated when he only escaped from them because Kragok had a dirt moment. Either that or he has a huge vendetta against anyone of Edmund's family because if it wasn't for his brother Dimitri, the stupid technology ban humiliating all the echidnas and causing the fall of their civilization, ruining their glorious reputation, wouldn't have ever happened. And they'd be like the ones in Anti-Mobius still at their peak. Then Knuckles immediately gives himself away, running right up to Kragok, threatening him. He is supposed to be an impulsive hothead after all, so I'd never say this was bad writing, as it's perfectly in character for him to make a mistake like this. My problem is, if he's going to do this, why let him talk and risk getting hurt? Why not go all the way and just immediately punch him in the face? Sadly, we get this tense confrontation interrupted right in the middle of the tension with a past flashback, and it just came to me. The perfect solution to these jarring flashbacks. Why didn't they just split these up into two different stories of past and present, with the past being the backup stories? That way you wouldn't have feeling jarring, switching time periods all the time. Instead, this feels unfocused and made some of the writers feel like the past events were intrusive and didn't belong. When it would have been perfectly fine as fascinating world building if they didn't have these be interruptions. Anyways, in the past, the kid arrogantly comes to the Dark Legion saying that he's hoping to work out an agreement, and seeing his obviously arrogant look here gives me hope that the writers actually weren't taking him too seriously and instead know he's in way over his head. I have absolutely no idea what happened in the next panel because it just cuts to the still image with no images in between for added context. All I know is that already, even in the past, the Dark Legion members still looked really weird under the hoods of their cloaks, with yellow, featureless eyes and mouths and red heads like they're aliens or something. Other than that, I have no idea what's going on in this panel. He's just saying "ow" for some reason. Then the cyborg the kid was just talking to points a ray gun that I just realized was actually wired like a lame fire hose. What kind of ray gun is that? And he says that he should have known the kid was not to be trusted, even though he just said that he doubted that very much, so he never trusted him to begin with. And the kid shows that he's just as hot-headed as Knuckles is by saying that the cyborg he was supposed to be negotiating with has got that backwards. And as what else could explain an assassin wearing your colors? I have no idea what he means by this. I just know that he's dodging a laser attack. Well, maybe he's saying that some member of the Dark Legion tried to kill him? I don't know. He just phrased it weirdly. The kid attacks one of the goons badly enough that his mask falls off. I knew they were wearing masks. That explains why they look so weird under their cloaks. This reveals to him that this is someone he knows, although I had to reread the text multiple times to know what he was even saying because it was in black and red and stuff. It turns out that this guy is the kid's cousin, and he hates him because, as he put it, "It was your father's treachery that resulted in my father's death." Treachery? But Edmund hadn't even gotten the chance to do anything before Dimitri started creating Mount Fate and stuff. And even if he had supported him the whole time, Dimitri would have gotten crushed anyways. This guy's just trying to find someone to blame. Some people do that in response to grief. I've been disappointed in the idea that it wasn't Dimitri's kids at first when I learned that Edmund was the kid's father, but that was because I assumed the two kids watching Edmund's science presentation were siblings, not cousins. But now it looks like I was still right, that Dimitri's death had a layer of tragedy to it because it deprived the kid of his loving father. This kid looks like a rebellious teen with his black hair in that style, and with his bloodshot eyes and angry expression. He looks like an elementary school bully. It makes sense that he would have undergone that kind of transformation because he actually lost his father in the Dimitri incident, which is way more damaging to a kid's psyche than with the kid where Edmund survived. Anyways, Menaker, basically lashing out at someone who had nothing to do with Dimitri's death while unable to handle accepting that Dimitri had gone insane before that anyways, explains that one night he was startled by the flashes of emerald light that shot up from the ground over where his father once was. He had gone there a lot earlier to mourn a whole bunch of times, so there's an explanation for why he'd been there at that time. He says that it was as if his father had sent him a message. Even though his father couldn't have known he was there from under the rubble, unable to see or hear anything. And didn't he explain in the Knuckles miniseries he only knew total darkness after he had gotten crushed? Did he shoot out that light subconsciously? But if he was capable of doing magic in his sleep, while unconscious and too crushed to move, shouldn't he have eventually freed himself instead of just sending out one beam of light meaninglessly? Menaker explains that he got the idea that his father wanted him to continue what he started. No, I'm pretty sure Dimitri only wants himself to be the one running the world. I'm guessing running the world is what he's meaning by continue what he started, and that he's too insane from grief at this point to morally object to his father's megalomania. And I'm saying this because if he thought his father meant carry out my original plan to land on the island by draining his Chaos Emerald, then the Dark Legion in him would be trying to do that. The kid warns Menaker, that he's just creating disaster for his people. And then, the kid suddenly blasts green emerald light out of himself in a display of magic that makes some members of the Dark Legion run in fear from disturbingly green-colored smoke. I actually kind of like this. The kid's proving that he's not all talk now by revealing that his training with the Fire Ants unlocked the echidna magical potential in him as a guardian. Still, I'm not sure how all of the echidnas don't know how to do this by now. You'd think if echidnas were known for magic, they would all be practicing it regularly. Or is he the first one to find out echidnas have magic like this in them and can train themselves to do that? Menaker says that Dimitri wasn't the only one attracted to the energy of the Chaos Emeralds. Wait, attracted to? You might want to reword that. You and yours will pay. Is there a word missing there? How did that mistake even happen? I don't know what he's trying to say. Also, it looks like Steppenwolf was the name of the kid. Okay. At least if I remember that, I can stop calling him the kid now. Menaker doesn't let the magic intimidate him into not attacking him for some reason. But then he gets sent into a green portal by Steppenwolf, who says that everyone has paid for Dimitri's pride and arrogance. Those words mean the same thing. See what I mean about him thinking he's more profound than he is? Well, if this was intentional, I'm all for it. He is a kid after all. The ant that befriended Steppenwolf says that he's worried about where it will go from here after Dimitri's son tried to carry on his legacy. And in a moment that I actually think was pretty cool and well done. We see Kragok and Knuckles look faded and blurry in images in the past, and then kind of fade into the real things in the most natural transition back to the present we've had yet. That was actually pretty well done. Still though, why the hell is Knuckles just staring at him? Just punch him already! You'd think that if he was hot-headed and impulsive enough to immediately give himself away and threaten him, he would have been hot-headed and impulsive enough to tackle him and start punching him right away instead of pointlessly waiting. and giving Kragok an opportunity to do some planning. I like how the Chaotix wise up by coming in to help Knuckles, with Mighty taking advantage of his super strength by lifting up the metal ground below them like a carpet to send Kragok flying. I love every time he does this, by the way. It's nice to see him being useful by using super strength. For some reason I was pretty confused at one of the Dark Legion goons asking if everyone's gone insane and saying that nobody's there, again, because I thought he was saying that Knuckles and Kragok weren't really there. But then I looked at the panel for a little longer and realized it was actually an invisible Espio attacking the goons, instead of, Kragok. I think if all of the Chaotix attacked Kragok at once, ganging up on him, Knuckles would have stood a better chance of winning, instead of some of them wasting their efforts on goons. Although I can understand why they fight goons, they want to make sure that they won't interfere with Knuckles. Knuckles' father watches Kragok on his monitor, and I just realized, why are all these monitors recording footage with no color in them now? You'd think if the Echidnas were advanced enough to have cameras and monitors like this, they wouldn't have had the footage for them be colorless. I mean, I think meta-wise is because the artists were lazy, but the only in-universe explanation I could think of is that this is the result of the cameras getting old and damaged from age and wear and tear, or glitching out and they have to fix it. But I could have sworn that we saw color footage for those monitors earlier. Knuckles' father says in a text blurb that he had used technology to defeat Dimitri, and a text blurb at the bottom corner explains that this is a reference to Knuckles issue 3, so it must be Knuckles talking, but I thought it was Knuckles' father talking, because if it was Knuckles, it would be connected to him in a text bubble. So that's really confusing. As we see Espio in the next panel in the middle of arbitrarily turning off its invisibility and looking like its legs are steam as a result, the text blurb continues saying, despite going against the teachings of the Brotherhood. What, by using technology? We finally see Archimedes teleport to Knuckles' side. What the hell took him so long? And while Vector creatively fights some goons with loud heavy metal that somehow doesn't deafen him or his friends, the text blurb train of thought says, I feared putting the Chaos Emerald in jeopardy the most. I'm really confused. First off, Knuckles is the one who guards the Chaos Emerald, not Knuckles' father. Was this text train of thought really necessary? Ooh, Knuckles' father is levitating while meditating. Reminds me of Dalsim from Street Fighter. Plus he's surrounded with green light. And this is all justified by him explaining that he's reminded of the link that a Guardian has with the Emerald. This makes me take him a little more seriously, but he then proceeds to not do anything, so what was the point? Naturally, Kragok shouts out his goons in frustration. What are you waiting for, you morons? Shoot them! And it's revealed that the reason they didn't was because their blasters weren't working. Aw, that guy looks adorable! The way his eyes and his mouth are shaped. He looks so sad. I actually giggled. What is with this story and charming moments like that? Without their blasters failing to work being immediately explained, Knuckles and his friends take the opportunity to attack them, and Knuckles tells Archimedes to leave the Chaotix out of here while he'll face Kragok, who's fleeing like a coward, alone. Even though he'd increase his chances of winning if he let the Chaotix come with him, but I guess he's just being a responsible leader by trying to make them leave to keep them from getting hurt. Vector complains that first there was no power, which I guess was supposed to be why their blasters stopped working, and now there's an overload of power to the point where windows are cracking from sparking electricity. Knuckles' father just says that only a Guardian can know those secrets. He then says for some arbitrary reason that he thinks Knuckles isn't ready to know the answer to that question. He's really underestimating his son. I hope it's just for his age, otherwise this problem will never stop. Knuckles is standing in front of 3 pipes and complains that he doesn't know which one Kragok escaped through, even though you'd think a Mobian like Knuckles could just figure out which one to take through his sense of smell. Why is the place falling apart? It honestly feels like the building is going by video game logic, where you beat the final boss and now his fortress is crumbling for it. And I don't even mean Sonic video games, I mean Zelda video games. The only explanation I can think of is that Knuckles' father pressed a sort of self-destruct button, but then why didn't he do that a long time ago? Knuckles decides to climb a ladder rather than take the 1 in 3 chance of going through a pipe to find Kragok, and climbs out of the underground to reunite with the Chaotix right away by sheer coincidence. Espio's line here at least bothers to develop his character a little, for once, by making it clear that he and Knuckles have a sort of rivalry, and so he's surprised he's so happy to see him. Charming says that there's no sign of Kragok or the Dark Legion, using some detective skills that kind of justify him being there to figure out that they must have previously arranged escape routes. And the story ends with Knuckles complaining that they were too unprepared for them to win. No, they're doing everything perfectly, really. The only mistake they made is that Knuckles didn't grab Kragok and have everyone hold him still to keep him from running away. This story was written by Ken Penders and Kent Taylor, and it was the only story, and it was certainly better than the previous one. Knuckles and his friends storm the base of the Dark Legion, have a good fight with Mighty, Espio, and Vector all getting to be useful with their unique abilities, but Kragok gets away because of a few dumb mistakes on Knuckles' part. The only really bad part of the story was that one scene where Steppenwolf seemed to be treated like a freaking messiah for some reason. I'm not worthy! That one panel disturbs me. But fortunately, the rest of the time he's in this issue, he's portrayed as being just as hot-headed and rude as Knuckles is, rather than being a perfect, mature little angel out of nowhere. And there's hints that he's just a silly kid trying to be more profound than he actually is, which is kind of charming. In fact, there's a lot of charming moments that made me smile in the story, even if I guess the humor was unintentional at times. I liked the Dark Legion goons running scared from the fire, and one of them looking inexplicably cute. But anyways, I also really liked the revelation that Dimitri had a son who went insane from grief with his death and tried to continue what he started as a result. It's like actions actually having consequences. You'd never see this in the games. It makes perfect sense that this would happen, and I feel sorry for Steppenwolf having his own cousin start hating him so passionately for something that wasn't even his fault. All out of a misplaced anger from grief. It's a sympathetic villain in a way. Other than that, the story really wasn't that bad. I'm just frustrated that Knuckles lost Kragok that easily. You should have beaten him right then and there. Logically, I mean. Of course, it would be too anticlimactic if you did that too soon. So I kinda like this story, I just feel like it dragged a bit. But this is coming from someone who's spending, I think, an hour and a half reviewing it, so take it out with a grain of salt.